Shawn, it's a pleasure to be with you here, today in Fort Lauderdale at the Four Seasons. It's unusual that you're down here in South Florida, so it's a nice treat for me. And I have a lot of things I want to talk to you about. The first thing is, can you tell me how it feels to be rich with the silver price at almost $35 an ounce?
I'll let you know when it goes through 50. No, it feels pretty good to see. Like, we were in an environment, if I go back to pre-April, right? Mm-hmm. Pre-$25 breakout. Mm-hmm. And I think we were in an environment where it didn't pay to be a silver miner. And now we're in this new environment. It's like a paradigm shift. So it feels great. It feels good. It feels, we're at a point now where, look, the industry has 13 companies that produce. And if you look at those 13 companies, and you've got companies like Aya that are 100% silver, mm-hmm. but then you've got others that aren't. But if you average it all out, half of the production from those companies is from silver, if you average it out, with a weighting on an Aya that's 100%. Mm-hmm. The total market capitalization today, even at $34 silver, is only $40 billion. Right? And the interest on the US debt that's accumulating on a daily basis is over $3 billion. So in like 13 days, the interest on the debt
is the entire silver market cap
of the producers. So look, those silver companies, because they existed in an environment that was pre-$25 silver, had to go out and buy gold projects, they had to go and focus on lead zinc projects, and silver is just a byproduct. I would argue, there really isn't, there's there's less than 13. Like, how do you really get pure silver exposure? Companies talk about silver equivalents, but the reality is, you don't use lead in photovoltaics. Mm. That Samsung battery is silver. So how does it feel? It feels, it's starting to feel better. We went through a depression for 10 years. It's starting to feel like, it's like the weather today. I can see the sun coming out, right? It's not there yet. It's still a little windy, still cloudy, mm-hmm. but I'm optimistic that it's going to be a nice day.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make, just how tough it has been in the silver mining sector, the gold mining sector as well, over the last decade. The last really great period of time in the sector was basically 2010 to 2012. And so you're talking about a 10 plus year bear market that had a few blips, like 2016 for 5 months, 2020 for 4 months, but it was still bear market rallies, right? So is this real? Like, pinch me, I must be dreaming that it's actually happening. It feels like it's actually happening. So silver this morning, 34.70 last I checked, that is a 12-year high. That is actually the highest level since 2012. Which was the end of the last bull cycle, right? Dolly Varden, the company was around way before you became the CEO. Pull up that chart of DV.V. 120 level, tested 2016, tested briefly 2018, tested briefly 2020, tested last year, and now 140. It's a breakout above that level. It's a big moment in time for Dolly Varden. A 10 plus year chart pattern breakout, if it holds for the next few weeks, is a very big deal. How does that feel to be the CEO at an all-time high share price for the company?
So I really haven't thought of it in that way. As a CEO, you've got a responsibility. Right? So, I've put the company in a position right now where we've got ample treasury. And I try to design a plan where we're one of the few companies you mentioned off camera, all the silver companies are raising money. We're not. And so I think the reason our share price is moving is because we've got $38 million in the treasury. Mm-hmm. And so, look, I remember during the last cycle, so I started in 2004. And in 2010, in the middle of the best mine finance market of the last 100 years, I was stressed out because there's a great responsibility that comes with a $450 million market cap, right? Looking at what are we doing? What can we be doing? What are, and looking around regionally. So I'm working really hard, and look, at some point, at the end of this bull market, whenever that is, whether it's a decade from now, whether it's 10 months from now, who knows? I'll look back and I'll have some of these thoughts about, wow, like, I remember being at Beaver Creek 2 years ago, September 2022.
Tough conference. It wasn't a good time.
We were down to 35 cents a share.
I remember that.
And I'd worked really hard putting the homestake transaction together, raising piles of money for drilling. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if we're going to drill in 2023 because I don't want to dilute down here. It's not worth it. And how fast things changed going into year end, and how the share price tripled. And so, I don't think I'll really, until, I'll look back on this moment at some point in the future and it'll feel satisfying. But in this moment right now, all I can think about is what we've got to do in this moment to maximize this.
The opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Like there's no time for celebration. I mean, obviously it feels good, but you're still in the middle of the game. In fact, the game just started, right?
And I don't want to I don't want to minimize, I got to be careful how I say this, but a bear market, a depression in junior mining, we are lower today than we were in the bottom of 08 for the venture exchange. So when you've been beaten every day, and really...
It wears on you.
Well, you know what? So do you believe it? Right? Now, I do, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't, right? There's been no incentive to be here, yet I still came, right? And so, for me, this cycle, 20 years in, is a cycle that I'm going on faith. The first time it was hope, right? So, look, it doesn't feel good, to answer your question. It feels like, I don't even think $50 silver will feel good. I'll tell you, I'm serious. Like $10 Dolly Varden doesn't feel good. None of it feels good, because what ends up happening now is, I think of the New England Patriots. How did the first Super Bowl win feel? Now that you're now you got to do it again.
I think that felt pretty damn good, but yeah. Then there were 5 more Super Bowls, right?
I'm just saying, now there's people that are coming to try to knock you off.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. There's always what's next, and how do we get to the next valuation? And it's true. I'm glad you said that about September 2022 in the Beaver Creek conference, because we sat there and we had a meeting at that conference, and I recall the mood at the time. I recall the share price was 35 to 40 cents or in that range, and you were optimistic, but I felt you were pulling that from deep inside because you had to be optimistic. It wasn't easy to be optimistic when the charts were all down, right? Now here we are, the charts are up. You mentioned the Treasury, 38 million in the Treasury. You guys financed at the end of August and early September. You got ahead of the crowd, as you often do. So who were some of the participants who took a piece of that financing?
Yeah, so I'm just going to use the term Sprott. And when I say Sprott, I think 50% of the deal we ended up closing $32.2 million. 50% was in the Sprott umbrella. So led by Eric Sprott, and a couple of the Sprott asset management funds. And really, like, you look at these companies, the reason Dolly is at a 10-year high, in my opinion, says as much about the shareholders. There's a lot of companies I was looking at last night, just kind of scanning. I follow hundreds of companies and their prices. And some are down yesterday. And I think one of the things that I attribute the 10-year success in the share price is the shareholders, is the Sprott. Is, those shareholders who have given us a chance. Because no matter what silver does or what we do as a company, if you don't have that alignment, that support, and people like that are good and give you a chance, you're never going anywhere.
Yeah, you need long-term capital, and that's what the junior mining sector has been lacking for the last decade, is long-term capital, or at least an abundance of long-term capital. There's been a very small core group that has been the long-term capital, but it's not enough to the whole sector afloat. It's just not enough, right? But that is very important. The shareholder base, Sprott coming in, taking in a nice chunk of the financing, and he's at 10%. The shareholder registry.
I just ran into Terry Lynch from Power Nickel.
Right.
And Terry's also got Save Canadian Mining, and Eric's been a big supporter of both
Save Canadian Mining,
initiatives. And Terry and I just looked at each other, and and we just both kind of, where would the industry be without Eric Sprott?
I know.
And we actually, I said to Terry, we actually have to, in our own little ways, we have to be like Eric.
Yeah.
In our own little ways, right? And and continue to fuel and support and fund, and be a good shareholder like he is. I don't know where the industry would be without him. I really don't.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. He's an example of a long-term investor. He shows his hand. He plays, with a wide open hand. He has to, and he can't sell that easily, and he doesn't sell like that often, right? He only sells when it's just kind of hopeless, right? So the program is done for the year. Can you tell us about that? What was the total amount of holes drilled, the total number of meters drilled, and when do we get the results?
So we started the year with the ambition to, and again, like when we plan these things, when we start planning them, we weren't planning them in a $35 silver environment, right? So we took a little bit of a conservative stance to start the year, right, for us. We planned 25,000 meters. We wanted, priority A targets, really just, go after things that, we're high-ranking targets. And so, the drill program, and we talked about this a little bit down in Boca a couple months back, is let's make new discoveries outside of the resource, let's continue to grow Wolf, and let's go chase that new discovery up at Homestake. And so, as the summer went on, and as we validated those exploration targets at Moose and Chance, we started finding veins and new mineralization outside of the resource, and particularly with the success at Wolf, we expanded the program. So we actually ended up drilling just a pinch under 32,000 meters. Now, what we've published to date, we had a news release, a result-oriented news release in June. We had a couple throughout the summer, one just before Beaver Creek. So we're due now. We're due for an update. And we've got a lot of meters, over 30 holes up at Homestake that have not been released yet. So we've got a lot of news. I've got a 97 meter step out pending from Wolf. And Wolf has been what the industry is missing, which is primary high-grade silver. And so that's an important 100-meter step out. So we've got a lot of results coming, and they should start getting released here in the coming weeks, and we should continue to report right through into January.
So I love that diagram from the presentation where you have the homestake, main, and silver, and you're going to drill to tie them in at depth. How many holes did you put in to test that theory, this year, and what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there's there's two main centers of gravity on the project. You've got the primary silver, which is
Wolf.
Yeah, and that's really part of a horizon that leads into the past producing mines, like the big mines, like Torbrit, which was a 50 million ounce mine, and there's still 40 million ounces intact at Torbrit, high grade. And then you got the Dolly mine. And then 5 kilometers away, you got the next center of gravity on the project, which is a silver gold rich zone, homestake silver, moving into this gold zone. And there's about 350 meters that separates them. So we peppered in 30 holes up there.
Oh, wow.
And they're pending, and what I'm hoping to show is there is a relationship between the two systems. And we've got maybe 20 slides in our presentation, and the title of one of the slides is Connecting Deposits. Mm-hmm. And the two deposits we show on that slide isn't homestake. Because for me, that's not a long leap. 350 meters is right there. Where I'm looking to connect deposits is there's a 1,400 meter gap between Torbrit and Wolf. And what's crazy is, it's actually not that crazy because I see it up at Keno Hill, I see it throughout South America, is every 1,400 meters, there's another vein. There's a periodicity, there's a repeating pattern. Mm-hmm. And so we know that, we understand the dip, the geometry, the plunge. What we can't say for sure yet is, are they all related? Absolutely they are, but are they connected? And then, what my experience has been in the last 20 years is when these things come together, special, tonnage and grade potential occurs. So it's really important to try to understand those relationships. But I think it's not going to be a big leap for me to connect homestake silver and homestake main. Okay. Like 350 meters. What would be incredible is if we plugged a hole right in the middle, in the gap at Torbrit and
Did you test that?
And Wolf. Well, what we did last year, and again, going back to how we planned the year, right? So it was about showing the periodicity. So it was about 1,400 meter moose, 1,400 meter chance. Those are big leaps until we hit them. And so we did a hole in 2023 where we drilled on the other side of the Moose Lamb Fault. So that's getting into that gap zone. And we tagged the structure. And there was something that, I can't remember the exact number, but the structure's there. And so we have tested it, and we have drilled some more holes around it. And but again, these projects, you need to do a lot of drilling. You look at the companies that have been successful. You look at the $4 billion takeout of Osisko. Big meters, millions of meters.
Yeah, more than 1 million meters.
Right, and you look at GBR, Great Bear, right? Big meters, right? So, I think for me, how do you get Dolly from a $450 million valuation to $1 billion? Big meters. And so that's why we've got that treasury. And so I don't think we'll be as conservative this next go round, right? It's time to
step it up.
Market's on, let's go. You know what? I've already developed enough gray hairs. It's time. I want to do this while I'm still young.
Time to go full blast. So, what's a full blast program like in 2025? Is that 6 rigs? Is that 7 rigs? I mean, it's the Golden Triangle, so it's a little different to mobilize that many rigs. It's possible for sure. How big is a full blast year for you guys?
So in 2023, we had the biggest program the project's ever seen. We drilled 51,500 meters. We had 5 rigs going, and it was getting that was a lot in terms of management. We had 90 people up at site. if we go beyond that, what we're going to have to ask ourselves are a few things. Number one, we've been running the program essentially if you look at the last 5 years at Dolly Varden, it's really been like a June to September story from a drill intensity. Now, the weather's been changing up north. We were actually on site in February of 2024. There's no snow. And
That's incredible, the Golden Triangle.
Yeah, and you know what? We're kind of like Golden Triangle-esque, like in terms of we're at the southern tip. We're still in that Jurassic Age Hazelton Suite that hosts the big deposits, but we're in a sub-basin of the Golden Triangle. And so where we are is right on the ocean, right? We're on a fjord, actually, that takes us out to the Pacific Ocean, but we're right on tidewater. And we're at a low elevation. We're in a valley, not up on a mountain. So it's Golden Triangle, but it was producing, like this thing produced year-round for a decade. And so not only could you explore year-round, you could produce year-round. And so my point is, what we have to ask ourselves, and we're like the Federal Reserve. We're data-driven, right? And we don't have all the data yet. So what I'm going to challenge the team with is, okay, when can we start? How big can we go? And I don't want to go at a point where it's not efficient and it's not managed properly, and we're got all this core flying around, and it's not systematic. Like I really, I want to stretch those dollars. So what I can tell you is I know we can do 55, 60,000 meters efficiently, cost effectively. It'll actually be cheaper because of the scaling of it up. But the question I asked the team are, can you do 100?
Yeah, I mean, that's the number that came to mind when I know you've done 50 before. But that's a tall ask, but we'll see if it's possible. The Golden Triangle, so, I think we can assert, knock on wood, we're in gold and silver bull markets. The Golden Triangle has a lot of gold and silver. I mean, it's like the Fort Knox of Canada, in a way, except all the gold's in the ground, it's deep in the ground. The consolidation of this area, there are some majors there that have pretty big land presence, like Newmont. How does this area get consolidated? Like, what's your vision for how the Golden Triangle evolves over the next several years, if this really is a real bull market?
In some ways, it's the Fort Knox of the world. You draw a 20-kilometer radius around KSM Brucejack, it's the richest on planet Earth.
Yeah, it's pretty enormous.
And
can you just tell us how many ounces are there? Because I think I know the numbers, but it's pretty mind-boggling.
Well, I'll tell you what's been discovered. There's been 155 million ounces of gold discovered. And what's crazy to me is this. So the Golden Triangle dates back to 1890s. Okay, so you got 135 years of history. It's been in the last 3 decades that 150 million of those ounces have been discovered, right? That's the part that, the glaciers are receding, the infrastructure's now in there. So 155 million ounces of gold, 1.2 billion ounces of silver. To answer your question, so Newmont's come in and they're producing up in the north with Red Chris, which is predominantly copper. And then in the center, they've got Brucejack, which is doing about 300,000 ounces a year of high-grade gold
Very high
production.
grade, yeah.
So you got 2 operating mines. So Newmont is the operator, and they've got a big piece of ground. You've got Teck up there as well. Outside of the majors in precious and base, you've got Skeena Resources. They did a phenomenal deal where they picked up these incredible past treasures, including Eskay Creek. And now we're fully funded to build it and go back into production. But in addition, they did a little deal where they acquired Questex, which was the old Colorado Resources. And Questex had a monster land package. So Skeena, so you got Newmont, Teck, Skeena. Then you've got the Ascot, right? And the Ascot's got the Premier, the Red Mountain, big land package. It was an amalgamation of the old Ascot, IDM. Then you've got Newmont, Teck, Skeena, Ascot, In terms of market capitalization, Dolly's bigger.
And then Dolly, and then you got a bunch of little juniors like Scotty and, you know, like a lot of other ones.
Teuton is a huge landholder. Dino Criminese's company. They've got an interest, a 20% carried interest in Treaty Creek, which is a big, big deposit. It's tens of millions of ounces of gold. I think it's officially 20. Like the biggest challenge in the Golden Triangle is there's a lot of grade, but can you build tonnage? It's the same challenge you have in different camps. I think of Australia is plagued with some of these same challenges. It's not unique, but the question is, as you now have power that Bob Quartermain brought to the Golden Triangle with the Northwest Transmission Line, it was a $100 million investment. It was an engineering marvel, bringing these power lines over mountains and the snow and the glaciers and the rest of it. So now we've got clean, low-cost hydroelectric power. We've got roads. We've got the upgrade of the Deepwater Seaport. You've got 3 production situations today, a 4th coming on in SK. You've got lots of permitted projects like nobody even talks about, like Kitsault Valley, just south of Dolly. And so how I see the Golden Triangle going is you're in a safe part of the world that hosts the richest projects. And I'm down here in Fort Lauderdale at this conference, and a guy comes up to me and he goes, you just stay in that location. Like everything works up there. Like Pretium, bought. GT, bought. You don't have to, like Walter Coles had it right when he started Skeena 10 years ago. He's like, I don't need to go anywhere else.
Yeah, you talk to some of the big, investors in the sector, like a Ross Beatty or a Friedland, and something that has stuck with me about these men and their big wins is they went to where the big ore bodies were, and they went to Africa, Congo, South America, in regions of South America where people said you can't permit. Mongolia, nobody had really ever gone there before, right? But you have to go where the big ore bodies are, the big high grade gold deposits, copper deposits, what have you. And so the Golden Triangle is that place. It's where the big ore bodies are, and the infrastructure will catch up. It will get built. It's starting to get built. It's being built. But I guess my question really is there anything that accelerates it, that sort of throws rocket fuel on the M&A cycle in the sector?
Well, Michael Gray put together an incredible presentation studying M&A in the Triangle since 2018. And the number so far, and this doesn't even factor in the Newcrest deal, that was a big deal. So this doesn't factor in that component, which I think would send this number to like 10 billion. So yeah, you've got officially up pre-Newcrest Newmont, 4 billion US in M&A in the Triangle so far. And if you think about that, that's little tiny $10 million market cap companies, and we're talking 4 billion US dollars. And so the M&A cycle started 6 years ago, and now that you have Newmont there, are you going to see, the numbers will be big. Like let's say somebody comes in and buys Skeena, right? That'll be $1.5 billion transaction. If somebody buys Dolly, under a current market cap, in order to get that to happen today, that's a $600 billion transaction.
600 million, yeah.
Excuse me, 600.
You're thinking big.
Was that a Freudian slip?
I mean, I like the B thinking. I mean, you got to think big.
No. Well, maybe.
I mean, the Federal Reserve could come in and buy it. We're going to go back on the gold and silver standard.
Listen, M&A is starting to pick up. It's producer, right? You saw that in the gold space a number of years ago, Randgold, Barrick, Newmont, Goldcorp, right? In the silver space now, you're starting to see producer, right? Silvercrest gone, Gato gone. So that flurry of M&A activity that's going to come down to the Scotties and the dollies is coming, right? But let the producers get married first, and let us go out and keep our heads down quietly and build shareholder value. You know, I've seen Dolly share price go up 700% in a bear market. What's it going to do now that the bull began? Right? But it's all relative, right? Like, it's all relative.
Yeah. So I got two more questions and then we'll wrap up. So news flow.
Yeah.
You said you've got all these results coming in, a lot of holes to put out to the market through January. You said you're due for, you know, an update. So when do we get the update?
It's a good question. Another year of drilling. Another year of drilling before we do that. But I want to say one thing. I'm not here because I can find the silver. Like, that's, you know, in terms of, I'm not a geologist, right? Nor am I a mining engineer. So don't think, and judge us on our past. You know, we had 2 acquisitions we pulled off since I've been the CEO at Dolly Varden. So in addition to, it's all about growing the mineral inventory. I see Dolly now, we have a phenomenal opportunity with this market cap, with this treasury, with the goodwill of our shareholders. I'm working on some things that are transformational and accretive. And so, yes, we're going to drill. Yes, we're going to focus on organic growth. But I'm challenging myself to, I've had positive reinforcement with the Homestake deal. Very, it was wildly successful. And so I have done a lot of work on studying projects, in the area and beyond. And so we are going to put out these drill results, and we are going to continue to grow. And maybe we get taken over before, that's another, there was just a report that came out of RBC where they listed a handful of companies that were, it was a silver report, top takeover candidates. There may have been 6 to 8 companies named, and DV was one of them. And so don't take it from me, take it from...
Yeah. Well, I'm a trader. I follow this sector as close as anyone. And I made a video on Saturday afternoon and seeing the price action in the silver juniors Thursday and Friday of last week. I see Dolly. I see a few other ones.
Yeah.
And they're at the head of the pack. Clearly the market, which are investors, traders, and hedge funds, see, well, we've only got a dozen silver majors that we can buy. Let's go down the food chain and get some of the top tier of the juniors, like Dolly Varden. And I think that's why you're above 140 a share here this morning, right? Final question. So you've been traveling a lot. You've been doing a lot of conferences. You're out there telling the story about Dolly Varden, telling the story about silver, the golden triangle. What have you noticed among the investors that you've had conversations with about their view towards the silver space, the mining sector? And, do you feel like the psychology is changing, that this is a place to put some of your capital long term?
So I'm starting to see signs that new investors are coming and waking up to the space, number one. I'm starting to see signs, but it's still like, we had a room of legendary wealth builders and creators that were here this morning. And it wasn't it wasn't that well attended, right? Like I was at the PDAC when 50,000 people showed up in 2010, right? And so to me, the fact that the silver to gold ratio is 80-1, the fact that the conferences are empty, right, tells me that as much as the people here are thrilled because they're doubling and they're tripling and they're quadrupling their money. So the feedback I'm getting is really positive, right? Let's keep going. But, I still think that for me, I'm going, when's this going to start? And it's surprising that $2,700 gold hasn't caught page one, right? Like what?
It's a surreal moment in time, because if you pull up any chart, gold has been in a bull market for many, many years. You could even say for many, many decades, but nobody really seems to care. And the mining sector is coming off of a decade-long bear market. So we're still dealing with the residue of that bear cycle, that extended bear cycle. And so a lot of people are still very skeptical. They don't think it's real. And just the psychology of the investing public is, I'll buy once it's gone up 3 or 4x and it's on the cover of Barron's. They don't want to get in early, right? And so that's still...
And that's the top.
Yeah, that's the top. Right.
Gold, I know a prospector buddy who was on the front cover of Time magazine in 2010. That was the top for mining equities in that cycle. So you're going to wait until it's there? Like, why don't we look at history and listen to history? There is a meeting happening right now where there's a new world order setting a new monetary system.
Yeah, the BRICS meeting, yeah.
And there's nothing new about it. You go back to the dollar, you go back to the pound, you go back to the time of Caesar, right? And there's nothing new about what Russia, China, and India are doing right now. And we need to wake up and ask ourselves, as the US dollar reserves have gone from 72% globally in 2001 down to 58%, with a 14% reduction in US denominated reserves, the price of gold has gone up 10x. What's it going to do?
When it gets under 50% or under 40%, which it keeps falling. It keeps falling a little bit every year. Yeah. And it's going to continue to fall. And actually a lot of the move in gold since mid-2022, I mean, gold bottomed in 2022 at $1,625 an ounce. It's $2,740 here this morning. That is a tremendous move in less than 2.5 years. That is an enormous move, and that a big part of that is de-dollarization flows.
And I just got to say, if you are privileged to earn more than you need to spend, save some of that in something hard and real and that has a long history. That's it, right? And now, if you want to speculate, buy a gold or silver mining stock.
Shawn, thank you so much for the conversation.
All right, brother.
Cheers.
Thank you.